Harvey, I don't think you're going to be seeing any increase in your discharge pay. You can always do. Next, we're going to have Marcia Hotop. Marcia Hotop has another one of those lovely names, Saloma Russell Harvey. So she's going to tell you about her life. My name is Saloma Russell. After I married William Harvey in 1846, I was Saloma Harvey. Now I want you to all think and count all of the women and girls you know with the name Saloma. That's what I thought. You don't know any. Neither did I, except for myself. I'm not sure why my parents, Robert and Elizabeth Russell, gave me that name back in 1828, but I have learned that the name Saloma is from the Hebrew word shalom, which means peace. So peace, that's a good name, and I've tried to live up to that. I wasn't born a Wells County girl. I was born in Miami County, Ohio in 1828, as I said earlier. At the time of my birth, I'm pretty sure that someone said, "Oh no, another girl?" Because I was one of 7 daughters and only 2 sons. Our large family helped fill up the Spring Creek Baptist Church in Miami County. It was there that I was baptized into the fellowship at a young age. And I'm pleased to report that that church is still in the gospel business as of this year, 2025. It was in 1834 that my parents, Russell and Betsy Russell, moved to Wells County, Indiana. Way back then, there were only Indian trails and paths to follow to reach our new home, which would be west of the soon-to-be town of Murray. We made our home on what was called the Drummond Farm. But we only stayed out on the lonely farm for about 4 or 5 years when our family moved to Bluffton. And that's where my parents stayed for the next 20 years. My father, Robert Russell, operated a grocery store on Market Street, and he had that business until 1871. I married William Harvey in April of 1846. He was 10 years older than me, but we were a good match. It should be noted that just a year before we married, I joined the Bluffton Baptist Church and have been a member ever since. Now I want to proudly tell you about the 4 children that William and I had. First was Robert Harvey. He was born in 1846, and he married Emma Perlman, and they gave us 4 wonderful, wonderful grandchildren. Next we had Cyrus Harvey in 1850. Sadly, he passed away in 1873, and more sadly again, that is the same year that my husband William passed away. They're buried close together in the Bluffton Cemetery. Next born was our daughter Mary Elizabeth, and she was born in 1851. She married Simeon Lee, who sadly passed away in 1870, leaving my daughter Mary Elizabeth, a widow, and their young daughter Rosa without a father. And then last born was Junior. He was named after his father, William Elsie Harvey II. Now, backing up a bit in my life story, I have always, 37 years always, been a good, faithful Baptist. But my husband's parents, Robert and Elizabeth Harvey, who had 300 acres in the Lancaster Township area, were charter members of the 6 Mile Church, which is just east of Bluffton. In 1838, these determined Christians met in a log cabin along the 6 Mile Creek and organized this first church in Wells County, and they had the help of circuit preacher Hallett Barber. And this church, too, is still in the gospel business. Even though my kids had a rich heritage in Baptist heritage and a Baptist upbringing, 2 of them chose to join their grandparents' church, 6 Mile. They found their spouses there, and we all know that love is a powerful draw. After my William passed away in 1873 and daughter Mary Elizabeth lost her husband, I moved in with her and granddaughter Rosa. I did some seamstress work to help pay the bills. However, my time with them was not so very long, because in 1882, I came down with typhoid fever. Knowing that my earthly time was nearing the end, I deeded over to my young teenage son, William, my last 35 acres. I figured this was a good way to give him a start in adult life. I passed away at the not so old age of 54 years, 3 months, and 10 days. And that was in 1883. I want to read to you a paragraph from my obituary. Now, I'm not bragging. I'm not trying to brag. I just want you to know me better and to understand the kind of woman that I was. Here goes. To say that she was a devoted Christian woman is only to remind all who knew her of a fact that was apparent to all. Her earnest exhortations in the prayer meetings of the church will long be remembered by us all. She leaves 2 sons, 1 daughter, 4 sisters, and 1 brother, with a very large circle of friends who will greatly miss her. Her death was one of triumph in her Savior, in whom she long trusted. An appropriate sermon was preached by her pastor in the Baptist church on the 11th of February, after which her remains were laid beside her husband's in the old Bluffton cemetery.
And last, we will have Jacob Bourne. Now, we've had to have a little substitution here at the very last moment. And so Jim and Jen Sturgeon will be portraying Jacob Bourne and his wife.
Good afternoon. My name's Jacob Bourne. I'd like to share you a little bit of my family's history and my story with you today. I was born in 1844 in Kentenberg, Switzerland, in Old Country. I believe I have come the furthest to Bluffton of our group today. My father died when I was still a boy, and as the oldest son, I stepped up to become the man of the house. When I was called upon to join the Swiss Army, however, I decided that wasn't the life for me, as I would not be able to earn much to support my mother. So I made the decision to go to America, the land of opportunity, where I knew I could earn more to send home to Switzerland. I ended up here in Bluffton, where I became a metal bender in a metal bending factory. I both worked hard labor bending the metal by hand and also had assistance of machinery on some of my jobs. Later, I became self-employed as a carpet weaver at a company that I formed on our home on Jersey Street. As a side note, my brother also emigrated to America, settling in Cincinnati, where he lived out the rest of his life. He had no children, so left no heirs. I met a young woman, Ellen Magley, from Columbia City, who would quickly become my wife. We were married in 1878 and made our home at 418 South Jersey Street. We had a good life and 2 lovely children. I'll let my young and beautiful wife pick up the story from here because she likes to talk.
Well, it's only because I outlived Jacob by many years that I'm qualified to tell you so much more. You see, I was only 14 when I met Jacob. He was 20 years older. So, tell me nothing. But he was handsome and he had a good job. 2 qualifications I was looking for in a husband. So, we became man and wife in 1878. And wouldn't you know, our first child, Louise Catherine, was born in 1879, less than a year after we were married. We affectionately called her Lulu. And then our dear boy, Charles Conrad, came along just 2 years later. Sadly, my dear Jacobs have come to complications from an abscess at the young age of 45. The doctors thought he probably had what we then called consumption. Do you know what that really was, what that's called now? Tuberculosis, very good. Which must have greatly weakened his body and he couldn't fight off the infection. Thus, I became a widow at the tender age of 25 and was left to raise my 2 children, who were then only 10 and 8 years old, and I never remarried. Now, Jacob belonged to the Order of the Knights of Pythias, and the lodge conducted his burial service at the Bluffton Cemetery. They even placed a Knight of Pythias pin on his suit lapel before he was interred. Now, you have to remember that for later in the story. My children grew and prospered in this area. My Lulu married Bert Hesher in February of 1900 in our home on Jersey Street with 60 friends and relatives in attendance, and that was faithfully recorded in the Bluffton Chronicle. They left that evening on the Lake Erie South train bound for Muncie. What a wonderful place to spend our honeymoon. They returned in time for Bert to attend the E Company reunion. Now, he probably was a soldier in the Spanish-American War. That's all we know. They returned, he of course wanted to display to his comrades his extreme good taste in his selection of a wife. The couple lived with me for a time until they could set up their own household by the end of that year. Now, Charles married his sweetheart, Grace Andrew, in 1905. They had 3 daughters, Louise, Elizabeth, and Patricia Jean. Sadly, Louise died when she was only 3 years old. Now, Charles was a hard worker, supporting his family through his work at L.L. Bender Delco, and then serving, listen to this, as Bluffton's city electrician. He got to drive the city's first cherry picker truck. He was employed by the city for 19 years until his death in 1948 at the age of 67. But the biggest event of my life came in 1906 when I, surprisingly, inherited land from Jacob's family in Switzerland. The Bluffton Chronicle reported it like this on February 28th that year. Mrs. Ellen Bourne received a letter on Friday from Switzerland which notifies her that she and her children, Charles Bourne and Mrs. Bert Hesher, currently living in Warren, are entitled to a 1/3 interest in a family estate in the above country, which is now being duly settled according to the laws of that land. This is not one of the mythical European legacies that have given false hopes to so many in the U.S., but it is a bona fide estate located at Kentenberg, Switzerland, the birthplace of Mrs. Bourne's late husband. The property to be divided belonged to the parents of Jacob Bourne. who sadly died about 20 years ago when the children were still very young. Oh my, I was now an heiress. I was blessed and my fortune was great. So I used some of the proceeds from the sale of the property to bring my dear Jacob from what was no longer the most desirable resting place in the Bluffton Cemetery to one that was more appropriate to a person of our means. Now I'm going to let him all about that.
Thank you, dear.
And he's supposed to look like he's only 40. So just use your imagination.
I know people think as my wife alluded to, I was buried with my nice log or
Pin.
pin.
The pin
Yeah.
thing.
Yes. My memory fails a little. And I happen to have a copy of a publication I am not familiar with, the Bluffton News Banner. I knew a lot about the Bluffton Chronicle, but I'd never heard of this. But this article tells about the fact, as my wife had just mentioned, she came in some money from the old country. And she moved me from the Bluffton Cemetery to Fairview Cemetery, because that apparently at that time was the place to be buried. It was newer. But she decided that she knew the pin was buried with me, and she thought her son Charles ought to have it. So she asked for permission, and the coroner, Herman Thoma, followed up on that. And he opened the casket and took the pin off my chest before they put the reinterred the coffin back in the ground. Now, this pin had been underground in a casket for 19 years. And according to what I read here, my son took it to a jeweler to have it cleaned. They said it was tarnished to an extent, but it was in a good state of preservation. And my son was able to have that in possession for the rest of his life. And we happen to have the very pin right here, available for viewing afterwards. Since my son was so young, less than 10 when I passed, my wife thought it would be a good keepsake for him. As I think we've mentioned before, I was born on May the 26th, 1844, and died August of 1889, and the pin was recovered in November of 1907. And that concludes our story.
Except for one thing.
Oh, I knew there'd be something.
Of course. You have to leave it to
Okay.
me to tell the details.
Yes, I'll let you.
Because this article was written in May, there's not a third month, May of 1986 by Jim Barbieri, whose wife happens to be sitting here right with us, taking notes for that good old news banner.
Well, we need a little time here to wrap things up. So as I find my place. Okay. Hope everybody got their name put on the list. It's very important we get everybody's name because we have to account for our expenditures. The donations that you put in the jar today will go toward the Wells County Genealogy Society. Does anybody have any questions about any of the actors that were portrayed here today, or the characters were portrayed. So you were all very interesting. Yes, go ahead.
I've wondered this for many years, the location where the cemetery is, that area is being called Stringtown.
Yeah.
Any idea where that came from?
Everybody can hear me, right? I always heard it was because North Oak Street Extended was just kind of strung out from the rest of Bluffton. You know, if anybody has any other information on that, prove me wrong.
And is it still referred to that today? I mean, I've been
Older.
from Bluffton 50 years.
Older residents, I haven't heard it called Stringtown as much in a while.
Yes.
Yeah, just a comment, there used to be a William Kipfer lived over there, Wells County line, out of Wells County. William Kipfer.
I think everybody knew.
I'm not sure her husband was active, thought somebody that knew her.
So we've got one other Saloma here. Any more? Anybody else? All right, a little more housekeeping here. We'll be having our next snippets program on Wednesday, October 8th at 10 o'clock here inside the museum. And it's about the Daughters of the American Revolution. So the Daughters of the American Revolution are associated with the upcoming celebration that we're going to be having at 250. So anybody is welcome to come and learn a little bit more about them and what they do and how they're associated here with Wells County. The name of their chapter is Captain William Wells Chapter. The last snippets program is again, our illustrious historian is going to be revealing some plans about our county's 257th anniversary. And that is on Wednesday, October 15th at 10 o'clock. I think Randy is at our last one. Okay. The Historical Society, no, it is the Historical Society that is sponsoring a night in the museum on Friday, October 17th from 6 o'clock until midnight. The event promises to have food, games, a movie, and a lot of fun. Reservations are required, and the cost of the evening is $30. And if you are interested, please see Jill Martin today. The Wells County Historical Society will be holding their annual fall meeting on Monday, November 10th at 6:30. And we will be having a reading of several letters from
World War I era.
World War I era. And the meeting is going to be here in the annex because we have some things that will be going on in the museum and we'll be able to have a meeting there. The Wells County Historical Society is going to be having Christmas in the Mansion. And it's going to be starting the weekend following Thanksgiving and go until the weekend before Christmas, and we will have more out about that. The 14th, what is the Harvest City Christmas? 13th. The 13th, we will be open from 10 o'clock in the morning until 5:30 in the evening. And we would like for everybody to come back. I believe our genealogy president, Roger? Sorry, Larry. So Larry McAfee is going to tell us a little bit about
just a couple of things as I wanted to encourage everybody that's here today, especially if you're interested in history or genealogy or anything, be sure and sign up. As president of the Genealogy Society, this is the newsletter we get every month. I looked at it, it's 21 pages, and you got, Tom here, he, has done a good job through the years, and I'd like to see that, everybody would, you know, if anybody's interested, in it, it's invaluable, $25 a year just to get this. Tom does a great job on it. Tom Libby, he's sitting right here. The other thing I was gonna do, and I've done this some other meetings or whatever, so some of you may have heard this, but one of the neatest things that he done this time, and I thought was really fits into everybody's life, and when you're talking about history and genealogy. It says a high school reunion was the title of it. Now, I'm sure all of you have had those or went to them at some time. It says, have you ever been guilty of looking at someone your own age and thinking, surely I can't look that old? You'll love this one. My name is Al Smith, and I was sitting in the waiting room for my appointment with a new dentist. I noticed his DDS diploma, which showed his full name. Suddenly I remembered a tall, handsome, dark-haired boy with the same name who had been in my high school class some 40-odd years ago. Could this be the same guy that I had a secret crush on way back then? Upon seeing him, however, I quickly discarded any such thought. This balding, gray-haired man with a deeply lined face was way too old to have been my classmate. After he examined my teeth, I asked him if he had attended Morgan Park High School. Yes, I did. I'm a Mustang. He beamed with pride. When did you graduate? I asked. He answered in 1959. Why do you ask? You were in my class, I exclaimed. He looked at me closely, then that ugly, old, bald, wrinkled, fat, gray-haired, Decept son of a gun asked, when did you teach?
Thank you all for coming today. We always appreciate you coming. Come back again and visit us in the museum. We usually open on Wednesdays and Sundays. We're all volunteers, so if you are interested in becoming members or becoming active in the museum, please let one of us know. Thank you.
And there's flags at cemeteries if you want to go out and see the
That's right,
gravestone.
I'm sorry. We always place flags at the cemetery. So if you go out to Old Bluffton after the program today, you will find flags on the graves of the people that we did portray here today.
And there's also one at Fairview.
Okay, so that Jacob Gordon is at Fairview. Moon. Yeah.
After you go over the railroad track on Hale Street and the gate of Old Bluffton Cemetery, you'll see two of the flags immediately in front, and then the other two are by the railroad tracks.
One more thing, I heard this on the internet, don't know how true it is, but Winston Churchill and his wife Clementine were coming out of their apartment, and she beat him to the street. And as he walked up the apartment, he looked down and saw his wife speaking to a gentleman. By the time he got down to the stairs, the gentleman had left, and so Winston asked Clementine, he said, so who was that gentleman? And she said, we graduated from high school together, and he's a street sweeper. And she said, back in our high school days, we were sweet on one another. And Winston says, oh really? So had you married him, you would be the wife of the street sweeper? She said, no, if I would have married him, he would be the prime minister.
So you have a question?
Yes, how many graves have been moved from the old?
You know, we don't really know. We no longer have the walks in the cemeteries, especially because Thomas is the one that wanted the very first cemetery walk to be there, but we had lots of things to learn. Many of them had been dug up, and then the it was kind of.
What do you mean by
neglected.
dug up?
Dug up and moved to the new cemetery. As in some cases, the husband died very young in life and the wife remarried, and so she wanted her first husband to be buried with her in addition to the second. But the graves were never really properly filled in. You know, they initially would fill it in, so walking across there, it is not real safe, and it's not very well maintained. And they've made a couple of attempts of digging up some of the old tablets, but I don't know if you know, in the old tablets, they fit in a space that's buried deep in the soil, and then the tablet simply fits in that. And so, over the years, because of weather, whatever, deterioration, people hitting them, vandalism, whatever, they break off at the ground level. And it used to be, I think, a product called liquid nails would hold them together, but kind of destroyed the whole, I don't know, thing. But it's not safe. There's no restrooms, there's no place to park. So we just don't have the cemetery walks there anymore because of the hazards that it presents.
Well, I grew
There's-
up in the north end of Bluffton. We would play in the cemetery, pick strawberries there.
Okay.
And just looking at the picture, it's like, and of course, when you're a kid, you see things differently. It seemed like there were just graves everywhere. And the picture here is almost like there's none there now. But again, it was something.
Okay. Well,
There is a list of some of the ones that had been removed from Old Bluffton and transferred to Fairview. I can give you a list of a couple dozen, but there's probably a lot more than that.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Now, this gentleman knew of Saloma, and I think probably most of you have read the name Saloma, but you just forgot. Do you remember how John the Baptist died? Okay, well, the young lady who did the dancing that the king was so impressed with, guess what her name was? Okay, you can look that up when you get home, but yeah, you read that.
Yes.
Saloma.
There was a good Salome.